Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Jack Engelman. This is my dad, Dean Engelman, and this is episode 18 of the Unlimited Range podcast. And I think we should probably fire it up and say we apologize to all 10 or 12 of you that are loyal subscribers and viewers. We have been out for the last, I think, 3 weeks, but you guys were down in North Carolina doing some home buying type deals there, huh?
We were looking at a house in Southport, North Carolina, and we actually looked at quite a few, but we did put a bid in on one, and it was accepted. So we are going to be homeowners again,
Homeowners again for the second time.
for the
Not that
second or
bad.
third time or whatever it is, but first time not in Ohio.
Do you want to apologize to the viewers for that eating up some of our normal schedule time, so we missed a couple weeks?
I mean, it was. I think it was 3 weeks since our last episode, so it's it's a long time to be away.
Have people been barking at you saying we've been anxiously waiting for
I'm
your
waiting for the
weekly
next
drop?
podcast to drop. I can't wait for it to drop. You guys are just like the highlight of my week. So yeah, I mean, we've got to get this busy and rolling.
Yeah, so I think that's a decent segue there because I'm going to be honest, I didn't go back through the film. We kind of got obviously missing a couple weeks. It's a couple weeks worth of picks. I don't really remember exactly where we left off, but I thought that'd be a good top of the episode, as well as maybe a little miniature Eagles recap. The Eagles are on the right track, it seems. Barkley had himself a pretty awesome game there on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, he will go down. He's my unlimited range performer of the week. I mean, he came into his old stadium and got booed, and they were burning his jersey in the parking lot, and he went off for 186 yards or something like that, and then shut it down, 13 yards short of the record, and let Nick Sirianni put the backups in. I thought that was a classy move on his part, and I thought it was. I mean, you can't expect anything more from a guy coming back and playing his past team.
Is it a thing now? It seems like it's a thing now. It seems like people are looking for ways to be kind of like, I don't remember necessarily when I was younger players, getting traded or whatever and then coming back, and like I remember, it's a little bit of like an added motivation, but I don't remember, this like hostility that almost seems to exist now where like a player leaves a team and it's like, oh, I just can't stand that guy. It's like, because like to me with the Barkley thing, it just seems really confusing because it seemed like they get off of having to pay a guy when it's clearly not a position of need in a semi rebuild situation. The Eagles get a running back to kind of hopefully make a push for a deep playoff run. It seems kind of, I mean, obviously you don't usually want to trade with your division rival necessarily, but do you understand like the level of like disdain some people in New York seem to have for him? Because
Well, I
I,
mean, I
I don't
think
really get it.
The Giants fans in general, really hate the Eagles and actually the way that they've been running their organization. So I think that's part of it. When we hopped them to get Devontae Smith, that was, those people were going nuts, especially when their pick ended up being Kadarius Toney or whatever his name was. Going back to like people that are, have gone back to a team that they played for, in a very, you know, um, in a really competitive thing. I can't think of too many examples. I think a lot of times in baseball and stuff that these guys are kind of past their prime and they're on, their team and just maybe chasing a ring or something like that. I think you maybe seen some of that in basketball, but I don't know how many times somebody in any major sport was traded to one of their chief rivals in the prime of their career, and went. So I can't think of a good example of that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of hard off the
I
top of
guess
the
Brett
head, but
Favre. I mean Brett Favre a little bit, but I mean, you know, I think the big thing is it's in division, right? So they're playing them twice a year, so that's going to be, if you trade somebody in football, like if the Eagles trade somebody to the Bengals this year and they're playing the Bengals, you're not going to play the Bengals again for another like 8 years. So it's,
yeah.
or at 8 years at home. So it's a long time in between. So I don't think you
Yeah, I
see it
just think it's
happen
kind
very
of
often.
funny. I just find it a little bit funny. Like, I certainly understand certain ones where a guy like requests a trade and it gets really ugly, but the Barkley situation just really wasn't that ugly. He just wanted more money to kind of, he's on like probably his last big contract. He just wanted to get paid, get his payday, and the Eagles had room to pay him, and the Giants, obviously are going in a little bit of different. I mean, I get it. We're fans. If the shoe was on the other foot, I'd probably like be like, I hate this guy or whatever. But I was just surprised it's how it got played out or whatever in some of the media stuff. But yeah, he's your unlimited range performer of the week. I won't. I guess I wouldn't. I would probably just double down on that. I think that was a it wasn't perfect, but I think that was exactly what I was looking for them to kind of come out and do, and I think it was an added, but like I think it takes some of the pressure off Jalen Hurts in those style of games, which I think is exactly what the Eagles need. Um, they don't need people. We don't need like all this focus on what he is or isn't doing. And I think it was refreshing that he was able to throw for like 112 yards, but we just dominated the game because we didn't even need to throw it because you're just running it so effectively. And that's kind of how I see that the team being successful. Um, as the season wears on, is just relying on the running game, kind of patching up some of those things defensively. So to win, even though the Giants aren't good, to win in dominating fashion like that was, I think, exactly what we needed in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think my potential second person there on the unlimited range was Marcus Mariota. We'll talk maybe a little bit about him on the head to head if we're going to hit that. But then on the limited range, curious what your thoughts were about Tampa on Monday night chasing the Ravens in a game that they were seemed to be
Yeah,
hopelessly out of.
I think you're aware of what my thoughts are on that because yeah, it cost me my fantasy matchup. It's one of the dumber things I've probably ever seen. Chris Godwin lost for the season in a ridiculous pursuit of a 24-point deficit in the fourth quarter. Yeah, I went into that one. So I went into Monday night up 22 points. I had a lot of buys this week, so I was kind of worried about it because he had Derrick Henry and Rashad White, and I was up 20. But I also had I didn't have a lot of my best players. Kind of had to figure it out. So I went with Rashad Bateman and Lad McConkey. And so I didn't feel great going in, but Rashad Bateman had a hell of a first half
Yeah.
and actually ended up with like 23 points. Lad McConkey ended up with like 10. So I felt really good, especially with Derrick Henry rushing for 23 yards in the first half. Rashad White, per usual for him, didn't do anything. So I had a pretty thorough lead. And just so happened both teams were working together in collusion to pretty much cost me the week because uh, Tampa just decided to stop playing run defense. Derrick Henry rushed for about 140 yards and a reception touchdown in the last 20 minutes of the game. And the Ravens just decided they're just going to stop the deep ball, but they're just going to let Rashad White catch about 7 passes for 82 yards and a touchdown in the last 20 minutes of the game. So, yeah, he scored a combined probably 40 points in the last 20 minutes of game time to beat me by 3. So that's pretty. You don't think when you're up 23 and you, let's just say this, you do think when you have to start Rashad Bateman that you're probably not going to win. But then when Rashad Bateman goes out and is the third best producing fantasy wide receiver of the whole week, you do think you're going to win that one. Um, Especially in the scenario where Todd Bowles, I guess, is just ready to destroy his entire lineup in
Well,
pursuit of a
I
game he's
mean,
not going to win. And then they got the fucking onside kick.
yeah.
And then they got the onside kick. Like one onside kick has been recovered all season, and they're going to get the second one, and then they're going to go down and give it to Rashad White 3 or 4 more times. It's just, yeah, it's kind of crazy, but
Well,
I
but I
guess it's
mean,
just how it
and
rolls.
after the game, all the announcers were like, "Well, he had to keep playing. He had to keep going
Yeah,
after it." And it's like,
sure, Chris Godwin doesn't agree.
yeah, I don't. I was very surprised, and then these guys don't play preseason games because they're worried about people getting hurt. But yet, you've already lost your number one receiver, and it's questionable whether he should have been playing because clearly he was limping around at the start of the game and then blows out his hammy. So he's gone for a couple weeks, and then just you're down 10 points with what under a minute and a half, no timeouts, and you've been fighting and scratching and clawing. That's great to me. And other people may agree you got to go down to the whistle. I know you were play to the whistle guy, but I just was like watching this and I'm like, why are they doing this? Just run the clock out, go home, look, and then you could. So I was surprised, and I was also surprised that everybody to a person was like, that's what he has to do. Todd Bowles has to, or he's going to lose the locker room. I just didn't seem right. I didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a. I mean, let's just put it this way: in the Eagles game, it was 28-3, basically going into the fourth quarter, and both teams punted, uh, put in the backups and everything. This was 24 points with, I think, like less than 6 to go. Timeouts weren't on your side. So you were basically, I mean, they did get the, I mean, they got an onside kick, and it still was like a 14-point game.
I think it was
So
10. I think when Godwin dislocated his ankle, it was a 10 point.
yeah, I mean, obviously I have my feelings because of the way it worked out for me personally on an individual level, but I think it's also, again, I've lost in dumb fashion before. I lost a couple of years ago on a lateral play. I've lost when Dak Prescott took 2 knees in a row, and I lost by point 0.1 because of the negative rushing yards. So like I've lost in some ways, but there's something that's significantly worse about losing in a fashion that's just absolutely shouldn't happen. Like it's one thing to lose on a play. It's like, oh man, that's just bad luck. It's another thing where the two head coaches are conspiring in a game of stupidity to try to like maximize running back points in the fourth quarter in a game that's 24 points out of reach. So that's tough, but I'm just
Yeah, I'm
looking
not
to get
sure.
back at it this week and dive into it. But
Yeah, I'm
let's
not sure why
spin through
Derrick
here
Henry was
now.
in that game either. That doesn't seem to be a
Yeah,
good use of
freaking King
personnel
Henry.
on John
What
Harbaugh's
can you
part.
do about the King? Um, so I think we'll look at the. I believe to this point, I only remember losing one of my picks thus far. I'm going to start it off this week, and there's a couple tempting little matchups that I kind of like. I'm kind of thinking about, and I wouldn't say I feel incredible about what I'm going to go with here, but I just think, for one, I've been catching a lot of flack for this. I'm higher on the Panthers than most. I think the Red Rifle is going to get those guys right, and I think they've got enough players. I'm not. I couldn't fathom taking the Broncos minus 11 in this spot, so I'm going to go ahead and make the gutsy move, and I'm just going to take the Panthers plus 11.
All right, all right. And
I don't love it. I don't love it, but I'm going to do it.
yeah, I don't have a game this week. I was thinking about looking at. I think the games that are intriguing to me on the schedule this week. Interesting. San Francisco and the Cowboys. That's going to be an interesting game. I don't know what the spread is on that one. I'm not sure how I would bet that, but I thought the one we maybe go head to head on was the Commanders and the Bears. So the Bears are going to Washington, and they are giving up 3 to the Commanders at home. Marcus
Yeah,
Mariota had a
I'll gladly pound the Bears minus 3 on that.
all right, and I'm going to gladly take the Commanders regardless of whether who plays a quarterback. I think they've got some mojo, and Marcus Mariota probably had his best game as a pro in a long, long time. And it is interesting. You got the Cliff Kingsbury and Caleb Williams, thing going on there too. So, but I'll take the Commanders. You're taking the Bears, and we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I've been high on the Bears for. I think one thing I think I have a pretty decent skill set for being a little bit early in terms of teams that I secondarily enjoy outside of the Eagles and that are on the rise. I was big on the Bears the last 2 years. They've won me some money as underdogs last couple of years because I've continued to believe in them. I was big on the Lions back when they were losing, when they had that like 3 or 4 win season. I said these guys are cooking something up here. That's how I feel about the Panthers. I think everybody likes to point the finger and say they're a lost cause, but I think if they get the quarterback right, I think they got enough players. So I'm gladly take Panthers and Bears head to head against you this week because I think you're underrating the Bears' skill set, and I think Caleb Williams is going to get those guys on the right track.
I think Caleb Williams has been a lot better than I thought he was going to be. I'm still not. I'm still not on the bandwagon there, and but it is interesting to see the top three quarterbacks. I thought Jaden Daniels has been playing, leading his team well, and even Drake May has shown some signs of life. So I think it's interesting. It's good for the sport.
Yeah.
We'll see what the
How about
Patriots do there down the line.
before we go any further, why don't we set this up for Dean's trivia question of the week?
How
Where
about
if you're
it?
not
Yeah,
familiar,
I thought
if you're
earlier.
not familiar with if you're not familiar with our show, the Unlimited Range Podcast, where you can subscribe on YouTube, where our next goal for videos is 20 views on our next video. Dean does a segment where he gives us a trivia question, and we save the answer to the end of the show. So he's gonna lay that one on us, and then stick around towards the end, and we'll reveal the answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I will give a hint at the end of the show when I'm revealing the answer to this one. But so there's a fellow by the name of William Marston, and William Marston is the creator of Wonder Woman.
Oh.
But he also invented several other things of note. And tell me one of the other things that he invented.
Is there one answer to this, or is it like
there's probably a couple, but there's one well-known invention that he did, and it is somewhat. I'll give you this little hint. It's somewhat buried in a little bit of the Wonder Woman lore or her powers.
This one might be a little bit too hard.
This one is kind of hard, I will tell you that. But I will say this, when we get to revealing the answer, William Marston, if you want to do a little bit of research on that guy or read up on him, very interesting dude from the 1930s.
Good guy to look into.
Yeah, good guy to. He had an interesting life. So,
William Marston.
William Marston, and he created Wonder Woman.
Okay, we'll stick around for the end of the show.
What else did he create? Is our
we'll find out what else William Marston was able to create in his time on the planet. So I think we got a couple things I want to hit. We got our picks of the week. The one thing is, I meant to do this a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not quite as passionate about it as I was then. I had written it down, didn't get to it. But we had a conversation off air about something that's driving me crazy in not just NFL, but college as well too, especially now that college has the warning timeout that they didn't used to have. I'm getting really, really, really sick of watching just poor clock management. I just don't know. We had a conversation about it. We kind of agree and disagree on certain subjects, but this whole just bungled timeouts thing, and I just want to say this here for all 12 people that listen to it. If you take a timeout early in the second half because you're trying to draw them off sides and then you go proceed to punt, you're a fool. You're a fool. If you're just blowing,
we will agree on this. If your plan is to kick the ball, unless you're kicking
take the delay a game
field goal, absolutely. Always the timeout is worth more than the 5 yards every time, even in the first
amount of
half.
times I'm seeing these guys, professional coaches burning a timeout because they're trying to draw somebody off sides, and then they take the timeout and then they proceed to punt the ball away or kick the field goal or whatever. Is just absolutely infuriating. I don't care what team it is. I can't stand it. I also can't stand the whole just taking timeouts because you just didn't get the play call in. Like what? And everybody says on the broadcast, they're always like, he had to burn one here. It's like, the hell you did have to burn one.
No, you
take the 5 yard penalty.
Right.
The timeout at the end of the game is worth way more than this one play in the game where, okay, now we're backed up 5 yards.
Yeah.
It's just, it's crazy. It's lunacy.
It is. And I'm not going to.
What's your favorite scenario where coaches commonly bungle game management?
I think the
challenge flag.
Yeah, I think that
Challenging the spot.
the challenging the spot that rarely ever works, and it's not a good use of your challenge flag. And I think yeah, I think the challenge flag is a problem. Taking timeouts to save 5 yards is definitely a problem. And under almost any circumstance, I mean, you're now in a pass happy league. How many times did you watch the Rams convert long third downs last night in that game against the Vikings? So, just because you're taking 5 yards doesn't. But how many times have you also seen, man, if that team had one timeout left, this could be a whole different situation.
And they
The other
just
team
burn
might
it.
have to
They just
pass or
they just burn the ball. They just burn the timeout carelessly, and then you're sitting there with 3 minutes left, and you're like, "Wow, if they had this third timeout, this would be a totally different ball game." And the timeout they took was just because they were having trouble getting a play in or something. And it's like a totally meaningless situation. Especially, it's one thing. Okay, I'll say this to kind of it's nuanced. It's one thing I think if you're driving and you really firmly believe like taking a timeout in this spot could lead to points on the board or whatever. It's like I can forgive those types of things. But the amount of times I've seen like somebody's on their own 27-yard line, it's like 3rd and 12, and the quarterback goes and pops a timeout because it's like the conversion rate on that is already extremely low. If you get the first down, you're on your own 36-yard line now. So it's like, I'm sorry, that's just not worth a timeout to me. It's not worth a timeout in a close ball game.
I mean, I think the cardinal rule to me is like you want to be taking your timeouts when you don't have the ball, when you don't have control of the clock, and you want to limit the amount of times that you're in control of the situation and you're calling timeouts. When you do that, that should be considered a mistake on your part.
Is
So
it time
yeah,
for unlimited range? Is it time for my unlimited range unpopular opinion of the week that
sure,
I
yeah,
know
let's
you
do
don't
it.
really agree with? We had this conversation, but my opinion on when the clock is really low, but on the plus side of the warning, is that you should never call your timeout within the discrepancy on the play clock and the 2-minute warning. If they have to, if they run a play and if I'm on defense, I'm not calling my timeouts until I absolutely have to. I know you disagree. I'm not calling my timeouts until well, I'm calling my timeouts, but I'm saying like if I can hold on to one timeout and make them use the warning as the last one before they punt and I can hold that timeout for offense, I don't understand why that's not done.
So let me do this. I would say, like, let's give you an example. If you've got 2:45 on the clock and they just get a first down, they just got a first down. You have all three of your timeouts. Are you calling a timeout there?
No.
You're going to let that run down to 2:05, and then
I'm
you're
going
going
to
to
let it run down to where they have to run. That's exactly the scenario I'm talking about. I'm going to let that run down where they have to run one play before the warnings. They're going to run that play. I'm going to get the warning timeout. I can call two more of my timeouts if I stop them and hold a timeout for offense. I do not think because then I contain control of of one at least one spot where I can stop the clock when I want to stop it. And I do not it's no value to me to get the ball back with 2:03 on the clock, and now the clock is stopped for me. Now, if I get the ball at 2:03, I run a play or whatever, the clock is just going to stop, but it may not stop where I want it to
the
stop.
one thing I think what I factors into my strategy there is, am I going to force them? Are they going to just be able to run a play, um, a running play, and you know continue to roll the clock, or is it going to give them an opportunity to pass or run the
But the
ball?
clock's almost not a factor at a certain point because you're gonna have you're going to have around 2 minutes or less, regardless of the situation. I can have around that amount of time with full control of clock stoppage, plus or minus 3 or 4 seconds, or I can have the clock stopped for me and then the rest of the drive, I got a minute 58, no timeouts. I'm in the same situation, except for I would have had that timeout to stop when I wanted to stop it. And then I can put, and then my strategy offensively can be different because, yes, I'm still going to want to throw things, outbreaking things to try to, force the clock to stop, but it opens up and exposes the defense has to respect you more because you could go down the middle a couple of different times or do whatever, and knowing that you have that ability to stop the clock. And then that leads into my last um, major gripe. Um, Two things, I guess. One, I don't need to understand. We've had this conversation. I just want to have it publicly for all 12 people that watch. Um, I don't need to know scheme. I don't. I don't care if I'm accused of armchair quarterbacking because I've never played at the highest level or whatever. There is absolutely no reason in a situation where it comes down to 3 downs, 3 timeouts, gotta stop them. Know they're running it. That the anybody should be ripping off a 7 yard run,
Yeah,
8 yard
yeah,
run,
I agree.
whatever. The amount of times I'm seeing that is, like I said, I don't care who I'm watching. It's absolutely just like we've had this conversation. Why are we not just cover the receivers, everybody else on the line of scrimmage? You
Yeah,
got to
no,
beat me
I
a
mean,
different way. You
you've
got to
lost.
you got to throw it.
You've lost the game to this point. So this whole idea of like you're protecting against something doesn't seem to make a whole
Like,
bunch
what
of
are you
sense.
protecting against? If they throw it long and they complete the pass, shake their hand.
So be
Nice.
it. I mean, I
We've
think
already lost
honestly,
anyway.
I was going to ask you like under 3 minutes or under 5 minutes, but really under 3 minutes with the three timeouts. I think what your strategy needs to be is I want to force them to throw the ball, or I want to
Yeah.
allow them to think that my best play here is a throw. And you know what? And if they complete it, great. But you know how
Well,
many times I've seen
that's my
somebody either
strategy for
drop it or
and
miss.
that's my strategy for holding the timeout too. Is I want them to throw the football. I want them to feel threatened by the fact that I have this timeout and possibly throw the football so that if I can force an incompletion, now I have 2 timeouts. I want them like if they beat you throwing the ball in that spot, then that's a gutsy move by the coach and the quarterback. And if they complete it and that's how they do it, you may look stupid, but I'm not letting somebody when I need the ball back and I've got 3 timeouts. I'm not. If I coached a team, we may not be a great team. We may not win the Super Bowl, but nobody's running 3 straight run plays for a first down
Well, yeah,
against
I
my
mean,
guys.
there's a couple things there. That's why, for me, I call if I have a timeout and they get a first down, it's 2:45 on the clock. I'm going to call my first timeout because I want to get that down to about let them run their next play and then potentially have a pass that where they think, oh, if I pass and it's still at the 2 minute warning,
Yeah,
I'm going to it's not going to hurt me, but I still want people passing the ball because the likelihood in the crunch time of them completing passes is much diminished versus
right.
halfway through the third quarter or whatever the case might be. So anytime you're behind, you want somebody passing the ball to try to stop the clock, and if they complete the pass, great. But yeah, I think we're in a similar space there. I do think that a lot of these coaches just have really bad strategies, and it's unbelievable. They don't value timeouts.
No, not nearly as highly as they should. Timeouts should be extremely coveted.
Yeah.
Um, all right, that was unlimited range. We'll call that unlimited range gripe of the week. Um, And now, well, before we get back to your trivia, we got one more thing. I have our second edition of Unlimited Range fan question of the week. This one comes courtesy of my fiance.
Oh,
Natalie wrote us in. She had a question. She says, "I want you guys to answer this on the show." It's not related to football, so it's a non-sports related question.
good.
She says she wants to hear from the guys what their most unrealistic or maybe uh, I guess you could say unrealistic purchase, bad purchase, uh, purchase you may have thought later I shouldn't have done that.
Like the house I just bought.
No,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't say you regret that.
No, not
It could
yet.
be unrealistic
Not yet.
though.
I mean, it wasn't exactly the timing. I think when I was in the '90s, I was probably about your age, and we just got in a house and things like that. And I was doing a lot of work on the house, so I thought, I need a truck, and I went out and bought a new Dodge Ram pickup, and that was one of the things that I just was really not a smart move on my part, and I didn't. I definitely got use out of it and things like that. But then we started having kids, and it just wasn't practical, and I didn't use it enough that it ever would have been. So I think to me, that's the first one that jumps out. What about you?
Did you have to realize that it was impractical on your own, or did somebody have to tell you, like, "Hey, I don't know if you really need this truck"?
No, I think when I traded it in and on a minivan later and all that kind of stuff, it pretty much dawned on me that that was probably not the best way to go about doing that. Um,
Do you recall though, like when you first got it, was there like did you kind of get like a boost, like this is cool, I got this nice truck, or was
yeah,
it
no,
just
I
kind of
loved
like
it, and I went out and got stuff from the hardware store. I would get gardening supplies, mulch, and stuff like that. But yeah, I it just wasn't it wasn't really what I needed at that point. It was a lot more expensive than I think the one thing for people your age that is really hard to fathom, especially like a house is one thing, but cars are just they're 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 at a price level where you don't think they're that much, and you're like, okay, I'm only going to be paying on this for 48 or 60 months, and I can afford this and everything else like that. And then you get into it in like 6 months or 8 months, you're like, okay, I am barely scratched the surface of paying for this thing, and I just
it's just
it's a
not quite as
lot bigger.
cool as you thought it might be?
It's a lot bigger mountain, and I do think of all the things that you buy that are needs. You can make a, a unfortunate buying decision on a car, very easily.
Yeah.
What about you?
Unrealistic or purchase for me, couple jump out. I wasn't the wisest financially until the last couple years, but it's kind of so I think I would probably have to the low hanging fruit would be the motorcycle. Uh, but that one, I got out of that one okay. Ended up getting my money back on there when I sold it, so it's not too bad. I think the one, I'm happy with all my tattoos. I'm happy with the way they look. I got into kind of a raw deal though on one of them because um, I was told essentially it was like my first. I had other like tattoos, but I was told essentially that I was paying for well, I thought I was paying for the completion of like half of my upper arm. I thought it was like, understood, like I was whatever, but essentially I just paid for 8 hours, a lot of money. And the guy kind of, I don't want to call him a scammer. And especially because he has been deceased. So I feel like that's bad taste. But essentially it was supposed to be like 8 hours. He spent like the first 4 hours just drawing it while I was there, which I thought was supposed to be done before I got there. And then and like an hour in, he wanted to break for lunch. So I so I think I got a grand total of like 4 hours actually where he was actually doing it. And then he said he would cut me a deal. And he let me stay an extra 2 hours, but he charged me for it. But he, instead of charging his normal rate, I guess he cut it like $70 or something. So, uh, yeah, ended up getting like 6 total hours of tattooing. Um, and then I was in the unfortunate position where it wasn't done, and so I had to get it finished somehow. And I felt like I felt stuck because I didn't want to go to a different artist to finish that job,
Yeah,
because then I thought it might end up getting botched because he was the original creator. So then I had to go back in and get him to finish it. So I had to pay again. So I paid I paid him more than I paid for all of my other tattoos combined.
oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, so I would say that wasn't that was probably that's probably got to go down with it, because at least with a motorcycle you can ride it around, you can have a good time, you can take it up by the river and do what you do, listen to some music. You can't really do a whole lot of that with tattoos, and then when you find out that you can get tattoos that are probably just as good for like half the price, that feels pretty bad. But yeah, so that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, some other show we should talk about. Like the one thing I'm thinking about. I've made some investments. And I haven't made too many tragic investments, but I know there's been some that I actually just sold one this week. Solar Edge that was had gone from like 50 or 75 or something up to over $200, and I just sold it at 20. Um,
So you didn't
so
lock in that profit per se.
yeah, no, I mean, that's the part is you lock in that profit, and it's like everything was going great until it wasn't, and then it was like they used to use a
You had to have bought like a tragic stock at some point. Like you had to have bought something that just went straight into the garbage.
No, I mean the ones that I think about are the ones that like had some kind of run up, and I sold either part of it or none of it. But most of the time, I usually sell part of it. But I didn't, it's and and then it comes cratering back down to earth at times. So I haven't bought anything that well. I mean, in the 2007 crisis, I had bought a company called IndyMac, and they were in like the mortgage market, and they just went they like just were blown off the map. I don't remember what the investment was in them, but it wasn't free. So I've made some bad. It's honestly, stock investing is like gambling. People tell you like, oh, I won this game or won that game or whatever the case might be, but oftentimes people don't tell you about their big losers or how many times they've lost. And stock
Oh yeah.
investing is the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, I bought Nvidia, and I just and he also bought this bozo stock that he bought at $50 a share, and 2 weeks later it went bankrupt or something. And people never tell you about those.
Yeah, no, I think it is a similar thing. It's like you have to. I think it's similar in the sense you have to really have a passion for it. Because like I have people tell me, talk to me about how they could never do the gambling thing, and it's like for me, it's genuinely a good time. So it's like it's if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. And I think it's the same thing. That's why like I don't do stock trading because it's just not. I just don't get anything out of like the stress of is if I buy this, is it going to go through the floor? Or is it going to explode? Like it just isn't worth it for me. I just much rather buy like little ETFs and just pump it in there and just let it do its thing. Yeah, but it is a very similar thing, I would say.
Yeah.
All right, we're already kind of at our usual
Yep.
unlimited range ending spot. So let's
Get
let's
back to
jump
William
back over
Marston.
to our huh?
Let's get back to William Marston.
Yeah, let's get back to William Marston and let's cap it off with the unlimited range trivia question of the week.
All right. So
Run it by us one more time.
for you out listening out there, again, thinking about this one, William Marston was the creator of Wonder Woman. He created it back in the 30s. He also invented what?
Yeah, I feel like it would just be like ridiculous for me to attempt to guess.
Yeah. How much do you know about Wonder Woman?
Very little.
She had, what was her, do you know what she used for
Doesn't she have like a
fighting?
trident?
No, that
Doesn't she have
was
like little
Aquaman.
swords or something?
She had like wristbands that deflected
Oh,
bullets
like
and
little
stuff, and she
wristbands.
also had a golden lasso. Do you remember what the golden lasso did? If you watched, I should have. I know Jared.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
I think so did she invent like sweatbands or something?
No, the golden lasso when Wonder Woman lassoed you with the with her golden lasso, she had to tell you were forced to tell the truth.
Oh wow.
How does that help you?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if it helps me. He invented maybe like truth serum's not real. That's the only thing I would think about.
Or how do you detect when somebody is not telling the truth?
Oh, did he invent the polygraph?
The lie detector. Yes, he did. William Marston not only created Wonder Woman comics, he also invented the lie detector test. There's also a disc test that you may have taken. It's like like one of those Briggs-Myers or Myers-Briggs tests, or like compatibility thing, personality test. He actually invented the DISC exam. It's DISC. A number of people may have taken that if they're into. I know all the people that I worked at Stock and Option Solutions, they all took the DISC test at one point in time. So that he also invented that.
Wow. So if you guys are watching this and if you got nothing else from it, you've learned a little bit about William Marston, and you can probably kind of take that back with you. It's never a bad thing to get more knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, if you made it to this point of the episode, do yourself a favor, Google William Marston and read up a little bit on his life.
I feel
it's
like
interesting.
I feel like for anybody who doesn't know me, in real life or whatever, I'm a big bit guy. I like to do bits. I think that would actually be a really good one. Like anytime you're watching one of those crime shows or something, and they're doing a polygraph or something. I feel like there's a bit there for like asking people. You don't know who invented the polygraph? It's William Marston, dumbass. Right?
The guy that
I think there's
invented.
something you could work with that one.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. All
I
right,
think
man.
so.
That's the trivia for this week. Hope
Trivia for this week,
I
and
know it was a hard one, but
we are not anticipating another 3 week hiatus. We thank all of our viewers who have loyally stuck by us and continue to watch our videos. We're expecting to be right back on track. We weren't necessarily anticipating the Southport home buying extravaganza, but now that that's over with, we should be locked in and ready to roll back on our weekly basis. Do you have anything for our people before we let them go?
no. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching.
All right. Thanks for watching Unlimited Range episode 18. Thanks to our Kiwis. Thanks for our people out there in Australia and other countries. We will be back next week for episode 19. Catch
All right,
y'all
man.
later.
See ya.